meeting 8th of June, formal. Anything else?
Yeah, Tories.
Next week.
Tories. He's the Liberal.
Hello!
He's my
hello.
heart. I'm his head.
We'll begin soon. So just before we get on to the main business of today, the panel debate, we've just got a bit of house business to go through. First of all, is the formal is on Tuesday. There's still some tickets left, so come to me or any other member of council to get you the ticket for that. It's at the Ulster Reform Club. It's £30 if you're a member, £35 for non-members, plus one's more than welcome, blah, blah, blah. Also, we're having our internal meeting on the 8th of June, which is to decide all next semester's debates. So we get a lot of feedback of, I want to debate this, why haven't we debated this semester? Go to that meeting or send one of us a message about what you want to be raised at that meeting, and that's the way to get your voice heard about what you want to listen, what you want to debate next semester. So, private members' business. Do we have any private members' business? Yes.
Could I just suggest the highest extended motion of thanks to our internal convener? She's organised the Dufferin, this debate and the formal, all in the space of a couple of weeks. So
well done.
Second.
Team effort. Anything else? No. Okay, so we'll kick off the debate. Tonight we have representatives from all the parties, all the major UK parties. They're going to say a quick 30-second, nearly 30-second introduction. We're going to then go into some pre-decided questions. We've got 6 of those, and then at the end of the debate, we're going to have closing statements. Yes. Pardon? Minutes from last meeting. Sorry, it's been a long day. Minutes from the last meeting, Robbie, and then we'll get into the debate. Sorry.
Good evening, one and all. The annual Dufferin competition to decide the Speaker of the Year of the Literary took place on the 30th of April in the Senate room and was attended by 23 members. Prime member's business was heard from Mr. Brendan Kellers, who wished to voice his concern at the potentially off-putting sweetness of Candy Corner. The President's questions were then heard from Mr. Oran Kennedy, who asked the Acting President for the evening, Miss Alexandra Philpott, what her breakfast consisted of, Mr. Finn Rogers, who wished to know if Miss Philpott had a nice Easter, and Miss Tor Corrigan, who inquired as to how many gin and tonics will be consumed immediately following the debate. These were pressing matters. In line with the rules of the Dufferin competition, speakers were informed of the motion just prior to the debate and were given 15 minutes to prepare their respective 6-minute speeches. President Philpott then announced this evening's motion. This House would legalise prostitution. Ms. Kate Waller opened for the proposition by emphasising that sex work is just that, work. She labelled its history as all the profession and compared criminalising prostitution to criminalising yo sushi, in stating that people are always going to want raw, wet fish. Think of that very well. She concluded by saying that legal or illegal, prostitution will always occur, and it is up to the government to ensure that it does so with the safety of its workers at its forefront. Mr. James McNally then opened for the opposition by saying that prostitution is in fact the oldest form of institutionalised misogyny, and is merely one of the many facets of society which serves only to bolster the male sense of power over his fellow creatures. He pointed towards the perceived failure of the drug decriminalisation policy in Portugal and questioned the ability of sex workers to effectively unionise. He concluded by reminding the House that if prostitution was legalised, while we could purchase sex, we could never purchase human fulfilment. Mr. Craig Miller then continued for the proposition by stating that legalisation effectively eliminates the black market, thus eradicating the stranglehold of gangs over the sex trade. True to form, Mr. Miller was quick to herald the financial benefits of legalising prostitution, noting that the extra tax would certainly go away to alleviate our nation's £100 billion debt.
140.
Give or take. He concluded with a phrase. He concluded with a phrase, simple yet much needed reminder that indeed people enjoy having sex. Thank you, Craig. Mr. Ben Rosey continued the opposition by opening with an impression which certainly bore no resemblance whatsoever to a certain recently deceased reverend. He asserted that prostitution minimized women into a mere commodity, and that when sex becomes a service, the workers are open to the abuses of the market. He commented on the German model, where despite decriminalisation, there has been no clear evidence to support the reduction of abuse, and concluded by saying that sex work is forever doomed to be a service and not a profession. Mr. Brendan Calvers then closed the proposition by stating that many of the issues raised by the opposition regarding prostitution are actually issues of capitalism in its entirety. Mr. Calvers took exception to the idea that sex is in some way fundamentally special. He debunked the claim that its perceived significance owes in some way to it being a physical pastime with the blunt reminder that, well, so is boxing. And if the other night is anything to go by, boxing is anything but special. He went on to note that the reason the vast majority of sex workers are women owes to the caustic fallacy of masculinity and power being intertwined. He concluded that this was not a problem of merely prostitution, but of society's often skewed sense of masculine values as a whole. Ms. Sophie Stratford then concluded for the opposition and so the debate by going against her fellow opposition speakers and saying that, in fact, the motion did not go far enough. She cited the example of the Dutch banker and former sex worker who was sacked by her company in the fear that it would open them up to blackmail. She went on to state that things must be rebuilt from the bottom up, and that men will always attempt to dictate to women exactly what constitutes feminism. Applause was heard from Miss Waller. She concluded by saying that not only should prostitution be legalised, but the way we inform children of sexual relations must be completely overhauled. As the judges left the room to deliberate, the debate then moved forward where questions heard from Mr. Horan Kennedy, Miss Gemma Cannon, Mr. Finbar Rogers, Miss Rosie Watson, Mr. Calvin Black, Mr. Finbar Rogers, and Mr. Calvin Black. A preliminary vote was taken based on opinion, which read 6 ayes, 7 nays, and 2 abstentions, while a casting vote based on speaker's performance read 4 ayes, 9 nays, and 1 abstention. After much deliberation, the judges stated that the Admiral Dufferin Medal was to be awarded to Mr. Brendan Calvers. Can I get the minutes as read?
Thank you, Robbie, for that. So just a forewarning, the Litterafic, we've never tried this format before quite to this extent, so bear with us if it doesn't quite work, we're just kind of winging it. So again, 30-second opening statements, we'll then go to some questions, 30-second closing statements. Just before we do begin, just out of sheer curiosity, we'd like to see how the audience is planning to vote. Obviously, if you don't want to tell us, that's fine, but just so we could compare a sort of before and after poll, just for interest. If you don't want to vote, again, we understand. So, if you are planning to vote for UKIP this coming election, or have already voted UKIP, do you want to raise your hand? Okay, and Greens? Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay.
This is clearly a stupid
SNP? You never know, there might be a registered... No, okay.
They would be very lost if they
Conservative voters?
Yeah.
2, 3... Plaid voters? Plaid Cymru? No. Lib Dems? Are there any left? Oh, there are! Is that 1 or 2? Just 1? 2?
2. There's one here as well.
Oh, right, okay. And Labour voters? 5, 6. Okay. And the rest abstentions. Okay, so 2.
That's not bad.
Are we counting?
We've got the 2.
Yeah.
Are we counting occupied 690s parties or the North parties?
Oh, yeah.
Are we counting them now?
No, no
That's
point. Alright. Only because we don't have any, representatives. It would be unfair to just... Okay. Anyway. So without further ado, we'll kick off with our UKIP candidate. Harry, you have 30 seconds when you're ready.
Well, you'll hear much tonight about the various issues facing both us and our brethren across the Irish Sea. However, we cannot even begin to deal with these issues until we reclaim our own sovereignty. The right to govern lies increasingly exclusively in Brussels these days, and unless we tackle this gradually expanding behemoth, we will never see our own liberty. Vote for real change this election, with great drinks and great policies. Vote UKIP.
And now we have Kylie Noble for the Green Party.
Okay. A vote for the Greens is a vote for the politics of hope. We're accused of being idealistic, that imagination is what this country needs, and indeed what the world needs. Climate change will be the biggest social justice fight of our generation. and we are the only party committed to tackling it. The Greens are for the common good. We will take on the banks and defend public services.
And Connor representing the SNP.
Well, guys, hello. I'm standing for the SNP in South Belfast. People of the UK have faced utter devastation under a coalition that is completely morally bankrupt. My party does, of course, stand for Scotland, but don't make any mistake. If you're against austerity, if you're against the wastage on nuclear weapons, if you're for the NHS, and if you're for lifting people out of poverty, then you are a friend of the SNP, and we will work with you.
And Craig for the Conservatives.
Now, I can stand up here and tell you how we have done with the economy, but you know how we've done. What I want to do is lead off with the NHS, and I want to tell you one of the small facts that seem to get buried in the media. Now, we've got the best surgical survival rates with cancer across the world. 99.7% of people that have a surgically needed cancer get operated on within 31 days. There's no country in the world that's better than us. That was achieved by removing the bureaucracy that government put in. We want to carry on doing this. We want to sort out the NHS, and the only way to do that is by putting in more GPs. We want to build a more inclusive society for the United Kingdom.
And now we have Robert Mercer for Plaid Cymru.
I didn't realise we were starting on the NHS, but a vote for Plaid Cymru is a vote for a stronger Wales. Can we strike that off the time, please? A vote for Plaid Cymru is a vote for a stronger and a better Wales. It's a vote to have strong representation in Westminster to ensure that we don't have a second-rate devolution in Wales, but first-rate. Like the Scottish Parliament, we want to see financial matters dealt with by the Welsh Assembly, because we believe in the Welsh people and we believe in the Welsh Assembly, and more importantly, we believe in Plaid Cymru, a strong party for Wales.
And now we have Richard Gallagher for the Liberal Democrats.
Okay, we've had weeks of the same old stats and cliches being repeated. I know I've heard Nick Clegg say that he would give the Tories a heart, the Labour a brain, and talking about anchoring things in the centre ground enough times. I'm not going to try to not do that. I'm going to try to explain why I'm a Liberal Democrat supporter. My politics is governed by one rule. Just because you're born a child of poverty doesn't mean you have to die a man or woman of poverty. Honestly, I know this is not something Labour will ever be able to ensure, and it's not something the Tories will either. Social mobility as well as liberal values are something that Liberal Democrats will always seek to protect.
And finally, we have Finbar Rogers for the Labour Party.
Yeah, well, the myth that's been told throughout this election campaign is that you can't trust Labour or the economy. Can't trust Tories with the NHS, can't trust Labour with the economy. That's how it goes. But the fact is, if you look at history, there's a truly balance to it, in that governments of all parties have presided over a buggering of the economy. And I'm going right back to the Whigs here. The fact is that governments of all parties have presided over recessions, but Labour governments have ensured that the most amount of people are less hit by those crashes. Is it me? Yes.
Thank you very much. So the questions that have been asked tonight have been pre-decided by our Literarum. We will be having one wildcard question at the end, so if you've got any questions, do hold on to those. And if you've got any points that come up throughout the debate, just put your hand up, and if we can, we'll try to fit you in. Yes?
Can I just say, from Claire, just to speak up, because it is being recorded and people do listen to it. So.
Oh. Okay, so the microphone's there, guys, so you can just try to speak up. Okay. So I think we'll kick off the debate with Ben Murphy's question. See out there somewhere. There he is.
The Conservatives have placed heavy emphasis on the importance of a free and accessible NHS over their campaign. Yet at the same time, as a result of cuts to legal aid, justice has never been less accessible to the less well-off. How can the Conservatives justify their commitment to one fundamental freedom while forsaking another?
Craig, would you like to come back to that?
Legal aid is the cornerstone of our democracy, and we absolutely support legal aid. You can't have a system which they've got in the States where basically the poorest always get found guilty because they can't get the best lawyer to support them. we need to carry on reviewing legal aid so that we can get the best bang for our buck. At the moment, that review is going on at the moment, and we're going to carry on reviewing it.
Connor, would you like to come back on that?
Yeah, certainly. So can I just clarify before we start? It is a debate, and not just statements and then a debate after. It's a debate the whole way through. Okay, just to clarify that. So we just sit down or just chill out? Sit. Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that before.
So, I think actually of all the heinous things that the Tories did in the course of their 5-year reign, the £250 million cut to the legal aid is probably one of the most gratuitous and the most often overlooked. Not only does it miss the point in that it doesn't save any money, virtually, because it extends the length of trials because people are now being forced to represent themselves in court cases. There's some very harrowing examples I've come across where, for example, in England there was an example of a child who was being taken away from his parents because they both had learning difficulties. Both parents weren't eligible for legal aid anymore under the Tory introductions, and so had to represent themselves. The judge, who was quite understandably fuming, as I hope we all are, said that the removal of legal aid under the Tories will start to undermine the rule of law. I think that it already has started. I think that it's inconsistent, to get back to the actual core of the question, to support the rights of British citizens for one vital need, like the NHS, and to completely rip up and destroy and disregard another, like legal aid.
I think it's important also to realise that the Conservatives, whilst also cutting legal aid, they want to repeal the Human Rights Act, which was brought in 1998 and ensures for all the citizens of the United Kingdom that we don't have to go to the courts in Strasbourg, but we can challenge here in the courts for our fundamental rights and freedoms, which the Conservatives claim to want to protect. But if they scrap the Human Rights Act, that's just completely ridiculous.
We want to scrap the Human Rights Act and put in a British Bill of Rights because we're Britain and we don't want Europe controlling us.
But can I just come in on that point and say, there's nothing to stop a British Bill of Rights in line with the European Human Rights Act. What is wrong with having an extra piece of accountability there to ensure that the British justice system is keeping in line with people's human rights? I don't disagree that perhaps there should be a British Human Rights Act, but why can't we have the European Human Rights Act as well?
I would just like to point out that no, the Conservatives do not want to implement a British Bill of Rights. They want to implement an English Bill of Rights. It's based on English law. Scottish law, Welsh law, Irish law do not have the same traditions. Scottish law doesn't have the same tradition of habeas corpus as English law. This just shows that this Conservative Party in particular are a party of chauvinists. A chauvinist based on the south-east of England. They're completely cut off the rest of the Union. When they talk about the Union, they're really just talking about England.
When you look at the manifesto, they're talking about the British Bill of Rights, and that is the British Bill of Rights. So that's what we are advocating. I do not see why we should be going to Europe for every single decision. It just
we don't.
Everybody
don't
has
go to
the
Europe
right.
for every single decision, and most of the decisions are made in
Harry, would you like to weigh in on this?
I don't think it is one of the greatest abuses of our right to govern ourselves to be subject to European bureaucrats at every turn. We think that...
Sorry, is European justice system European bureaucracy? Is it the same thing? Is having a justice system in place in the European Union the same as European bureaucrats?
Above our own past laws.
It is not.
Thing. Order. And just because this isn't a normal debate doesn't mean that we won't be fining members for inappropriate behaviour. Sorry, how would you like to continue?
One of the cornerstones of British justice system is the expectation of rule of law. If people going through the legal system cannot reasonably expect that they will at least get legal, affordable representation, then that de facto means they don't get their own justice. And the cuts to legal aid have been illiberal and wrong under this coalition.
I'd like to bring it back to the actual question about legal aid. Richard, do you have anything to offer about...
I was just going to say, I would like to bring it back to the question of legal aid. Legal aid is something that we can determine ourselves. It's not something that we have to look to Europe for. It's many things are overstated in that regard. and it is something that the Liberal Democrats have apologised for introducing, and it is a concession that we had to make.
There's a lot of things Liberal Democrats have had to apologise to do, isn't there?
This is what happens when you have 8% of MPs in government. We are a minority party in a coalition. These things happen.
I'm sorry, but does anyone else think that that's suitable enough? I personally, I don't. No offence, but I don't think saying because we're the minority party in government is good enough when families like Connor has mentioned are the ones that are being hit hard by this. The simple fact of it is you didn't try hard enough, and if you did try hard enough, you should have pulled out, because it is, and it's not just legal aid, but it's across the board. With this Tory Lib Dem coalition, the most vulnerable people have been hit hardest, and it's not just the Conservatives, but the Lib Dems have to take responsibility for that. And I, for one, won't accept saying we were the minority party in government. That simply isn't good enough, and I don't think it's good enough for the most vulnerable people in our society.
Do we have any points from the audience about legal aid? Yeah.
I'm just like to say that.
Would you like to stand up, sorry?
As a law student, I know exactly the extent to which legal aid has affected not only those who are most vulnerable in society, here in Northern Ireland especially, but also those who practice law, which they're not the focus at this point, but nowadays a trainee barrister or a trainee solicitor earns below the minimum wage sometimes, and for working for 4 or 5 years, perhaps more, which is hard to get into such a hard-working and very prestigious profession, that doesn't sound like a good incentive to sort of get into that and ensure quality legal support for the most vulnerable in society.
Just on that point, yeah, you're quite right. The average legal aid lawyer, I was reading, earns around £25,000 a year. It's less than nurses. It's less than a lot of teachers as well. But people tend to view the law profession as a very lucrative one. It seems to me that it's only very lucrative if you go for the particular sections of law which the Tories favour if they are in government. I think this also does actually have a thread that does relate to the Human Rights Act that we were talking about there, in the sense that the Tories are talking about also bringing in legal aid cuts in terms of judicial review, which would impinge upon citizens' rights to challenge the state, essentially. So my challenge to the Conservative panels here, and the UKIP panels here, and the Labour panels here would be, in terms of the Human Rights Act, in terms of scrapping it, what guarantee, if any, could you give to us here that we as citizens would have some sort of state that is accountable, that wouldn't just be able to, if it so choose, to run away judicially in terms of the law and do whatever it please? And finally, just if I can finish on this, I think in terms of legal aid, the best person maybe to go to for an opinion would be David Cameron's brother, who, as it happens, is a lawyer himself, and recently succeeded in getting a fraud trial thrown out because everybody that he was representing couldn't be provided with legal aid as a result.
How many levels of security do you want?
His brother introduced.
How many levels of security do you want when somebody loses or wins a case in court that they're allowed to appeal, then appeal, then appeal? How many times do you want that to happen?
I don't think it's about...
because that's basically what you're saying by wanting to go to Europe.
Oh, well, if we're talking about Europe, I mean, focusing on legal aid, I think the main point is that there are people...
But you just brought up a Bill of Rights, and the reason why we want to put a British Bill of Rights in rather than having a European court is basically to stop the endless appeals process. So how many times do you think somebody needs to appeal a case?
I'll tell you. I'd be happy with even just one, provided that
we have 4 at the moment.
I'd be happy if they could do it with just one, provided that it is outside of the mechanisms of the British state.
Yeah.
If we have absolutely no escape from the legal mechanisms within Britain, if we have no one to appeal to outside, it's a nightmare scenario, but there really is absolutely no level of accountability there. It's not a hard point to see. I think everybody here understands.
But you're living in Britain, and yet you don't want to abide by British law. That's what you're saying. That's what it sounds like you're saying.
We live in the European Union as well. We want to abide by EU law as well as British law.
I think also British law should be accountable itself.
Yeah.
You know, law is fluid. Laws are made all the time. You know, every government tries to make at least one. Laws can change, and I think that's the reason why we need some sort of external accountability.
Okay, I'm going to move the debate on to a question that we received online.
Can I get back to what Robert said?
No, sorry.
No.
Sorry, we need to keep to time. I'll come to you on this one. Funding for higher education is constantly being cut, which hinders student opportunities and stunts research as well. How would you cater for students who want to learn and at the same time increase much important research? Why don't you come to us on that one?
Okay, well, I don't want to keep saying the word concessions, but the education, the tripling of tuition fees has been a concession we had to take.
Yeah,
we have what we have done is we've made it affordable to people in terms of they don't have to pay it back until they start making £21,000 a year. That is something that a concession from the Tories made to us. So it didn't all work one way, we will review the education funding in the future, and it will be scaled appropriately in terms of how well the economy is doing. But yeah, that's another thing we apologise for.
How many apologies over here from you today?
Well, it's the same thing. If we put the UK first, we don't apologise for doing that. It's the same story down south with Labour. It's the curse of the minority party. It would be the same thing. The Greens would put the United Kingdom first by going into a coalition government that maybe not the SNP, maybe not Clyde, but it's something we're going to have to get used to, coalition governments, and minority parties have got to stop being thought of as having the power that they just don't have.
Kylie, where do the Greens stand as a minority party on education?
Education is one of our most important policies, as we believe that education should be a public right for all.
Are you going to fund that the same way as your housing policy?
Well, we would like to fund free education.
How?
Because there's Labour are making a lot of, we're going to have £6,000 fees. Isn't this fantastic?
Do the Greens know how much it's going to cost?
Really, that's not really that fantastic because most of Europe has free education. Scotland have maintained free education for their citizens.
That's right, baby.
There's the political will, there's a way. Tax evasion is about 35 billion a year at lowest estimate, so it's really looking at the priorities of what we want to provide for our citizens. Yeah.
If I'm coming in?
Yeah.
One of the flagship UKIP policies is for, as determined, if a student goes on a STEM course, they're not subject to any uni fees. This is due to the fact that in the UK we have a shortage of people going through these courses as they are required both for government jobs and our science industries. Also, we think that it's a shambles that grammar schools throughout Ireland, we are seeing increasingly people from a slim economic group going through the ranks and ending up in public positions. So if we let people with academic prominence go through and have the opportunities and not be subject to crippling debt when they leave university, we will be creating a generation of educated graduates. And that's what we need here.
What do you propose for non-STEM students? Are they not worth it at all?
Well, it's not, but the point on it was research specifically, and I think we do have a clear shortage of these specific graduates. Not that a non-STEM course is any less valid, but that we have a demand here, and clearly there's a gap in our higher education system. And if we encourage people to go into these professions, it'll be less in the public purse and more opportunities for graduates.
Robert, you had a point there.
Yeah, I just want to say one of the things that we believe in Plaid Cymru, as I mentioned, is to have first-rate devolution rather than what we've got at the minute, which is second-rate devolution, like the Scottish Parliament, to be able to have financial matters devolved to the Welsh Assembly. But just in the point of education, Plaid Cymru completely believes in free education for everyone. We don't want to discriminate against anyone. Education is a right and not a privilege. But what we've got at the minute with the second-rate devolution system is that we have to make tough decisions when it comes to education and university. If we were to have a first-rate devolution system, then we could see, as the SNP has done in Scotland, we could have free education. But at the minute, our policy with continuing with this kind of with the powers Welsh Assembly has is free education. Now, I'm going to say something which I thought I would never say is similar to that of UKIP, which is we need to have people going through Welsh universities to match the Welsh economy. So at the minute, dealing with what we've got, The Plaid Cymru believes in free education for STEM subjects, because we also believe in 1,000 new doctors and more nurses into our Welsh NHS, which under Labour has failed the people of Wales. We want to return the NHS. I know we're going to talk to you later,
so
but
Wales vote for Labour?
What's that?
Why did Wales vote for Labour, not Plaid Cymru?
Well, I know you have to ask the Welsh people, but the point is that what we've seen in the last Assembly term is the Welsh NHS failing the people of Wales. We've offered an alternative. If the Welsh and we offer a better alternative, but if the Welsh people want a better NHS, then I would say vote Plaid Cymru. Vote Plaid Cymru for a better NHS.
Do we have any points on higher education from the audience? Yes.
Yes, I'm currently looking on to around for master's courses. I've settled on one that I'm finding it horrible to get funding for it. The reason I'm finding it horrible to get funding for it is a very strange one, though. As a student going through the Northern Ireland system, I didn't actually pay the full £9,000 fees. They deferred them in Northern Ireland, the fee increase. But for some reason, all of the higher education scholarship schemes which have been introduced in the last few years to compensate for the higher fees, well, not just to compensate for the higher fees, including ones that existed even before the fee increase, have been rewritten to make it so that if you didn't pay the higher fees going through the previous few years, you're ineligible for any scholarships. The result is any student growing up, going through the university system in Northern Ireland cannot receive a scholarship effectively in any English university, which is incredibly bizarre. I'd like to know who thinks who is responsible for this, and what do they intend to do about it?
Does anyone want to speak?
So look, I see education as an investment in people's future, and as such, people should be making an investment in their own future. So basically, if there's funding available through loans that end up causing you to end up earning more, then that should be people's own responsibility to do so. So I think we should be trying to improve the access to very well regulated loans rather than through sort of scholarships or reducing tuition fees.
If I may, just before. Two things just very quickly. So to return to the question, I think it was how are we going to balance this paying for fees and also research? Was that, have I got that right?
Yes. Well, yeah.
I think, well, in Scotland, as was mentioned, tuition fees aren't an issue yet. And we've been able to invest more in research because of that. Scotland actually leads in the UK in terms of medical and bio research. A couple of suggestions that I would put forward, maybe to helping with the tuitions and the research, being able to pay for them both consistently. One would be to reintroduce the post-study work visa, so that students who come over here, or say let's come over to Scotland, are able to stay, or find it easier to stay at least, and work after the degree. The way it works now is that it can be very difficult for students who come over to study, particularly from outside of the UK, to stay in. So the SNP would reintroduce that. To get back to my colleague's point here, I think he really hit on the key problem with the perception of tuition fees, in that it's an investment in your own future rather than really an investment in the UK, and that an investment that the UK should be making in you. Graduates provide an undeniable service to the economy. The more graduates we have, look over in Germany where they invested in engineering courses, the more graduates we have, STEM and non-STEM, the better the economy does. It's an absolute fallacy to say otherwise.
Can I just quickly?
Quickly.
Yeah. I want to add in on that point. Our economic policy is not based on austerity. Our economic policy is based on investment, and it's crucial in terms of education that we invest in education. One of the major problems with the UK economy at the minute, that we saw under Labour and the Tory government, is lack of productivity. We simply don't produce enough, and one way in which we can change that is by investing in our education. What we've seen under Tory-led austerity is a low-skilled, low-wage economy. We need to invest in our public services, invest in infrastructure, invest in innovation and skills, invest in one of the most important aspects of any economy, which is education, and we can get high-skilled, high-wage workers, and that's, comment on that.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to move on now to a question from James, who I don't think is here. Oh, he's there! There he is! James, would you like to tell us your question?
Which one was I meant to ask again?
The first one. I can ask it for you if you like. Okay.
You're talking amongst yourself. Okay, sure.
It's the first compliment I've ever had on my clothing.
Medicine.
What do you believe Britain's role in the world should be?
So that was, what do you believe Britain's role in the world should be? Kylie?
Well, what's very unique about the Greens is that we uniquely recognise the need for global cooperation. So I think it's important we don't just think in terms of British citizens, we think of ourselves as global citizens. And I think that where we really need to lead is on climate change, because especially if we, English Greens from Northern Ireland, Northern Ireland, where we are so caught up in issues of flags and identity, no one actually addresses the fact that we're going to run out of fossil fuels. What are we going to do? What are we going to do to face, for example, the situation in the Mediterranean Sea at the moment, with the drowning of so many people trying to become immigrants, and UKIP will attack immigrants for coming to this country. But I think it's really important to remember that the vast majority of people coming here aren't just waking up one day and oh, I'd like to go live in England and live up to the old. Most of them are coming from very harsh, very tough lives, where we have played a role in making their lives very tough. Where Britain has went and colonised and has fought. We've talked of Labour, what they did in Iraq, and I think we need to really think of our responsibility as being to alleviate some of the pain that we've caused over the probably centuries.
Finn, would you like to come back to that? You mentioned there.
Well, Britain can have a very positive role in the world because it does have a very strong liberal tradition. The British state is basically like the opposite of a snake. Whereas a snake sheds its skin and its organs and its skeletal structure all remain the same, Britain has retained that outer layer, that image of monarchy and feudalism, whereas its internal structure is always changing, always reforming. It's the way it became a democracy was like sliding into a hot bath. It's eased in, little reform by little reform, and that's the reason why it has remained very stable throughout the last few centuries.
Okay. Harry?
Well, I'd like to think that a British-led 21st century would not be like a snake gobbling up smaller humans. But no, we believe in a less interventionist foreign policy. We believe that we've become the lapdogs, the vassal of both the EU and the United States. I would say our dedicated, prosperous one, in which we stand in a privileged position between multiple trade partners and profit and give the best future for those involved. I've been attacked that UKIP has a very hostile view of migrants themselves. However, I don't think this should be the case. What we advocate for is both our own independence and an Australian-based point system in which those who do have the proper qualifications, and no doubt can be very excellent citizens, we can decide whether we let them in or not some faceless foreign bureaucrat.
Yes, please, James.
So what about the 7 million English citizens alone who live in European countries? What's going to happen to them under the UK government?
Here.
Are we going to flood back in and we're going to have 7 million losers back on our shores?
Well, net migration has been increasing over the last few years. That
7 million more is a great idea.
It's not. It's their. It should be their decision whether they should come back out, and as long as they haven't relinquished their citizenship, it's the same deal. They are equally British citizens, so we've still got their obligations.
Can I ask, Harry? There was a report last year by the London School of Economics that said that net migration from the European Union actually had migration from the European Union actually had a net benefit into the British economy. That was something completely swept under the water in UKIP, sidelined as irrelevant. That is one of the top economic institutions in the United Kingdom, and that is something that your party has completely ignored. So I want to ask you directly now, what would you say to that?
Well, we believe that the social cohesion and important long-term impact of immigration has been overlooked. I have no doubt that having a large amount of unskilled labour does boost GDP. However,
it's what built Britain. It is what built Britain and what built the empire. If you walk around the streets of Liverpool, every street name is either a reference to the Beatles or the slave trade. And Ireland country has benefited enormously from people coming from all over the world, from Canada, Australia, all the parts of the British Empire, and Ireland as well. Walking in and out of its borders. That is what built the wealth of Britain, and we should share that
Sorry,
with the rest of the world.
Finn, please. Okay, Harry, would you like to come back on that?
Well, I have no doubt that we're a nation of immigrants, and I have me or my party accept
Not as a nation of immigrants,
that we want to shut the borders. What we want is to have our own control over it, as we have before the EU project. It is not an issue of the individuals coming here. It's an issue of the space and resources we've got available. It is honestly a crime that we don't have decisions over this.
Craig?
I think there's 5 things that the United Kingdom should be doing across the world on a scale. And the first thing is tax evasion. We've started trying to take it on. We're not succeeding well enough yet. I don't think that's a fault of our government. It's basically we need more international cooperation, and that's the first place to start. I think the second thing, like the Greens have touched on, is with climate change. I think the biggest problem with climate change at the moment is the development of technology, which is something that we would love to do, but it's to do with nuclear fusion, is the main form that we should be taking going forward. We don't have it yet. I'll let you jump in a minute. The third thing is the Middle East. We need to be supporting the 2-state solution, and we need to be going forward with that. The fourth thing that we need to be doing, which is what we've done with the other parties, is by putting £12 billion into foreign aid. The most important thing with the foreign aid is to sort out public health within the African continent, and that's what we've been doing. We've been trying to sort out the Ebola problem. Further, we've been going through multi-drug resistance TB, which is becoming a much bigger problem in England, and malaria as well. And they're the 5 things I think the United Kingdom should be doing on an international scale.
Okay, final point on this from Canada, please.
Okay,
If it's quick, it is quick.
SNP talking about Britain's role in the world. I think that, just 3 quickly then to meet your 5. I agree in a 2-state solution and agree that we should be playing a more constructive role in Africa. 3 things that I would add that haven't been mentioned. One is Trident. I think we should get rid of Trident. Trident missiles, there's no point in them. We can't use them. We can never ever use them. Save up £100 billion for the likes of the NHS, childcare, etc. Britain, I would like to see remain in the EU. Not only that, but I think if there is an EU referendum, there should be a double majority so that England can't vote yes and we leave the EU, with Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales kicking and screaming, trying to stay behind. And finally, one brilliant suggestion that was put forward in the SNP manifesto and has not been mentioned by any other party is actually to have a special diplomatic representative for the rights of LGBT plus people. Which may seem like a very strange idea, but think about it. The idea and principle put forward by the SNP is that there will be a special office within the British diplomatic system that will go out.
Didn't the Tories just legalise equal marriage rights?
Yes, but we're talking about Britain's. Well, first of all, Scotland did it first. Second of all, under the SNP. Second of all, talking about Britain's role within the world. I think that would be a great idea to do.
Okay, I'm going to move it on. Sorry. We're running out of time. I'm really sorry. Next, we have a question about the NHS that came in online. The question is it ethical or right that private companies make profit from the NHS whilst patients are denied certain cancer treatments, hospitals are closed down and nurse numbers are cut? Richard?
No, it's absolutely not. And there does need to be massive investment in the NHS, and it's something that we are making a priority. And there will be an investment of £8 billion as requested by NHS leaders into the NHS. And so yeah, it's something that we need to get on with.
We just want to say we completely don't agree with private companies having any role in the NHS, whether that's frontline services or car parks that we've seen here. It's also important to mention, we'll probably hear a lot from Labour Party, but about how they will protect the NHS. But it was the Labour Party who brought in the PFI scheme. I know I saw you writing that down there. But it was the Labour Party who brought in the PFI scheme. So I think it's very clear we cannot trust the Labour or the Conservative government when it comes to the National Health Service. But just when it comes to Wales, vote for Pedro. Sorry, that really took my head. Anyway, we want to see 1,000 doctors and faster GP appointments. We want to see investment in the Welsh
in the NHS, but particularly when it comes to Wales, as we are the Welsh Nationalist Party. We don't believe in setting arbitrary deadlines and arbitrary numbers the way the Lib Dems have, the Conservatives have. I don't know how they plan on meeting those figures. We believe in making sure that the National Health Service that started in Wales is continued, a national health service, in that it runs free at the point of need, we don't believe in privatisation.
Thank you. I'm going to come to Kylie now.
I think it's important, if we want to protect the NHS, we need to think beyond just the UK, we need to think globally. So we need to restructure globalisation, and a key part of that is opposing the transatlantic trade and investment partnership. And that seeks to maximise profit between the US and the EU. And one of the core aspects of that agreement is they want to open up the public health with the US market. So that is a really massive threat to our own sovereignty of the NHS, which perhaps Mr. Dare will agree.
That's the UKIP policy. The EU has, piece by piece, tried to sell off the assets of our National Health Service to foreign investors. We're seeing it taken piece by piece by the coalition and privatised off. We believe wholeheartedly in a free at-the-point service, and I couldn't agree with the Greens and Plaid Cymru anymore here. Furthermore, we'll take a forward-looking attitude to ensure that care is available for those in need. So we want to abolish tap-on tax. It's crazy that we have a luxury tax on sanitary products. We want to remove parking charges at hospitals, which is, let's be honest, a charge on care. And we would like to replace this aspect of atomisation and businessification of doctors by bringing it back to local interests and needs, by replacing the CQC with an elected standard board, which fits in with our theme of small local government. And also, we will ensure that we don't have to compete with foreign medical markets by funding the education of our own medical professionals with the condition that they work in the UK for 5 years. These are things which we can't do under the EU. Their regulations strangle and wish to, with their neoliberal agenda, break up one of our most important national institutions.
Finn, I know, sorry, I'm going to come to Finn on this one.
I'll lay down on the NHS.
One, we have been in the EU for about 40 years now, and we've also had an NHS in that time, so it's working all right. Secondly, yes, Labour did bring the PFIs, but Labour did also create the NHS in the first place. It is the greatest achievement of the party.
Exactly. Labour created it in the first place and then went back on what they created.
Robert, let Finn finish. No, let Finn finish, please.
I then it was her fault. She started the trend. We were on a post-Attlee consensus. She came in and turned it all around. We need to move it back.
Okay, all right. I'm going to take 2 points on here, and the first one is the comment about cancer medication. Okay, does anyone here know what a quality adjusted life year is? Yeah. Okay, good. So let's start there. Now, basically at the moment there is a sort of weighting on end of life to about 1.5 times what it should be normally. Okay, there's an argument within NHS circles that it should actually be brought down from the currently £30,000 ratio, even lower, to around £15,000 to £20,000. Yeah, okay, so that's the current argument, and the Tories are currently fighting against that. Okay, so we're trying to keep Qualis set at about £30,000 per quality adjusted life year. So we're trying to keep it. We cannot physically afford to fund every single cancer medication. Now, these are not curative medications. These are to prolong end of life. Okay, so what you have got to weigh up is taking something like dialysis or keeping somebody alive for 3 more months. Okay, that's the decision that the National Institute of Clinical Excellence have to make. Okay, we have let them make that decision, okay, and it is the correct place to be making it. We should be giving NICE more power, and the first thing they need to have is the ability to negotiate with drug companies, to be able to bring the prices down, saying to them things like, well, we can't afford your currently £45,000 per quality, but we can afford you at 30, and this is the amount of patients we're going to get. They need to have that level of negotiation right, okay, and we need to give it to them, okay, and that is something we can introduce. Okay, hold on, can I just carry on the private side a minute here? Now, in terms of private, the main thing that's getting privatised at the moment within the NHS is diagnostics.
Okay? Now, effectively what happens if you're working in a hospital is that trauma patients take priority, then inpatients, and then basically the poor relative is the outpatient. Okay? Because you have to treat what's in the hospital first, and you have to treat trauma cases before that. So with these outpatients, effectively we don't know inside the NHS what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so to give those patients a degree of safety in terms of when they're going to get their scan, private companies are getting involved, okay, and they are basically getting us the same rate that we get in the NHS quicker and sometimes at a better rate. And that's the reason why some things need to be going down the private sector, not to the level that UKIP want to.
Very quickly then. Okay, so on the UKIP point, I would actually agree with a lot of what you said, but I would actually contest that UKIP agrees with it. Who was it that said, and this is paraphrasing a little bit, more or less, that we need a more American-style insurance-based system in the UK.
No, you've misquoted
This was the position that was brought up by Nigel. However, it was the party's decision, and this is what's gone under a manifesto. So this is what we'll enact. There's no mistaking about this.
Okay.
Can I just say, you've just misquoted Nigel Farage there. He's actually said we discussed it and we ruled it out. Now, I'm sorry, when you're having a debate and a negotiation, you should put everything on the table, look at the merits, and then throw stuff away that has none.
Okay,
and that's what they've done there.
Well, that's what he did. Discussed it, then ruled it out.
Finn, let's let Connor speak.
If I may then. Regardless, most of what we've been discussing in terms of the NHS will be null and void if the transatlantic treaty and investment partnership goes ahead. David Cameron is very enthusiastic about it, I should add. He made it very, very clear at the G20 summit that he would be more than happy to ratify it. That is the greatest threat. Look at there's an international precedent of what deals like this could do. What happened in Bolivia with their water service, where it was privatised, and then when they tried to renationalise it, they were given a bill by large US corporations. So they were taken to court for trying to renationalise it. This applies to the NHS. It also applies to Royal Mail.
Is there anybody from the audience that'd like to come in there? Yeah.
Just in terms of the parties that come in all well and good, saying we're going to train more doctors, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I just want to know where exactly you're thinking that you're going to get all this funding for, all this money for to actually fund all this. And then also, just looking at the privatisation, you're talking about privatisation gets things a lot quicker, more efficient, more cost efficient, but if we actually look at the administrative cost of actually implementing it into privatisation, we can actually save ourselves shitload of money. But we could save ourselves a lot of money that could then be implemented another way, so I disagree with your point entirely.
Okay, so I'll take that.
No, I'd like to come to Richie actually, if that's alright. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the question was how are we going to fund it. That question isn't as easy for me to answer. We're not just going to slash benefits, or we're not just going to raise taxes. It is a more complex view, and we're going to take money from a much wider scope than just that. And I can't remember every single detail that we're going to.
Okay, Robert?
Yeah, can I just back on that point. First, I have a number of things to say on that. First of all, Wales already doesn't receive the same amount of funding as Scotland per head of population. If we were to receive parity with Scotland, there would be an extra £1.2 billion into the Welsh purse. But also, and both Labour and the Conservatives have been clear on this. Maybe not, crystal clear, but certainly from a Welsh perspective, will cut an extra £1 billion from the Welsh purse in the next Parliament. So already we're seeing £1.2 billion, not that should be ours, not in our purse, an extra £1 billion cut off. But also we want to see an end to austerity, and that's what we can deliver on. But the point is that we believe in progressive taxation, but we also want to see investment. Now, we're not opposed to borrowing more. And the reason we're not opposed to borrowing more, and to Labour and the Conservatives, that sounds like a drastic idea, but the reason we're not opposed to borrowing more is because we actually have a long-term economic plan that the Tories like to talk about that actually works and is long-term. In borrowing more to invest in the National Health Service and invest in our public services can ensure we get more people into work, and we can get less people off the benefit system, and we can actually produce more and get our economy growing. What we've seen is cuts a low, as I mentioned before, low wage, low skilled economy, 2 million jobs created. I'd love to see those 2 million jobs created.
We'll come on to the economy later. I'm going to move on to a question we have in the audience. Tara.
Hello. So counselling, CBT, psychology and psychiatry services are completely understaffed and lacking appropriate facilities. Many people in incredibly vulnerable positions are thus left untreated for months. How do you change the current system and give these people the treatments they deserve?
Now let's come to Richie, please.
More so than any other part of the Liberal Democrats have made mental health issues a priority. We've already introduced standards for waiting times for mental health patients, and we are looking to bring that up to the same standards as physical health problems. And so that is something that we will prioritise in the next government if we're there. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll take that.
Come to Kylie. No, you don't want it.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Okay, so I think the first thing here, the first point that any patient should have should be with their GP. Okay? Anytime somebody is feeling like they need to see somebody, it should be with their GP. Now, it takes 10 years to train a GP, which is one of the reasons why it's going to take the Tory government another 5 years for us to get in 7-day-a-week, 12-hour-day GPs, because it's been something we've been working on, and it's something we're going to carry on over the next 5 years doing if we're allowed to do so. Now, if you've got more access to GPs, and GPs nowadays are trained in mental health, okay, so that's the first thing. You need to have a GP that's actually empathetic towards the patient, okay, that understands the problem, understands the pathogenesis of the disease, and then can actually start making the correct treatment referrals into things like cognitive behavioural therapy, rather than just prescribing medication. At the moment, there's just a binge of antidepressants being handed out, and the reason is because there's not enough people that are able to actually counsel patients correctly, and it's because they're not getting to patients to GPs in the first place. They're often turning up in A&E. Okay, 40% of A&E arrivals at the moment are not accident or emergencies. It's a mixture of people that should be seeing somebody to do with mental health or somebody that should be seeing their GP. It's 40%. Okay, if we sorted out GP access, a lot of the problem that you're talking about will start dissipating. It will take time.
Connor.
Yes, I agree. There's one of the most important parts of this question, the issue between psychiatric health, psychiatric treatment, and other forms of medical treatment. There's a lot to do with perception. There's a debate right now across the UK in terms of the legal aspect between psychiatric health patients and other forms of health. There's never actually ever been any legal distinction in Scotland between the two. So the SNP have got a head start, at least, in putting forward the sort of policies that Craig suggested over here. However, although I do agree in principle with a lot of what Craig said, I find it hard to see how the Tories could implement it whilst simultaneously cutting and squeezing the health budget.
We've increased it by 8 billion.
Yes, this term, but over the last 5 years.
Who's increased it more over the last 5 years per head? Us or the Scottish Nationals?
The Scottish Nationals.
I think we have actually by an extra 3% per head.
If you're putting 8 billion, the Scottish National Party is putting 24 billion.
What have you done over the last 5 years?
We'll be able to do that as a result of ending austerity politics, with a modest increase of 0.5% in public spending in comparison to GDP. That will free up £140 billion extra for public services, 24 billion of which at least the SNP will be committed to putting in to the NHS by the end of this parliamentary term.
Well, our UK policies here are pretty clear. It's agreeing with both Connor and Craig here. We believe that local GPs should be more included in the health of individual patients, and they should take more responsibility over that. That's why we're pledging to keep them open at least once a week for local GPs. But the issue, the split between them is on funding. Although psychological health was, as treatment was certainly cut over the last coalition, we believe that it is not ethically or morally right that we're sending foreign aid to countries that have space programs rather than funding our own psychological health here with our own taxes. So that's why we're going to cut it from 60 billion to 5 billion and put the profit straight back into the public purse, either through tax adjustments or by properly funding psychological care, which very sadly is overlooked, even whenever its importance is the same as physical health.
Okay, Robert.
Yeah, I'm going to be very quick on this because it kind of comes back to everything I said before, and this it comes back to the idea of investment not only in health but in education. And the reason I say that is because if we are able to invest in our education, then we're also able to invest in mental health education and getting young people and friends of the young people and pupils and teachers to recognise the signs of mental health issues. We also want to see more counsellors in schools, so that the schools can actually provide mental health services for their young people. But also if we get more people into work and end austerity and able to have a more prosperous Wales, then I believe that we will dramatically that will dramatically decrease the amount of people who do suffer from mental health issues. So that, I mean, honestly, it is about investing in our health, and then also if we invest in the health service, then we can have better mental health services in as part of our NHS. But I don't see how we can in any way talk about improving mental health services if we're going to continue to cut parts, actually nearly everything in our public services.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the second to last question tonight. The UK's unemployment rate is falling and yet wages are stagnant. How do you plan to aid the economy to ensure wages keep up with inflation? Any takers?
I'll take that.
Okay.
I was looking at stats earlier today, and it actually said the average increase in wage over the past 5 years has been 2.1%, which basically says they've been going up rather than been stagnant. We've also managed to get unemployment down underneath from the Labour government from 8% to 5.5%, and that's going to carry on going. I think one of our flagship policies is the £50 billion of stimulus that we're going to be putting into a northern powerhouse, into areas like material science, science and innovation in Newcastle, and cognitive computing in Daresbury, and then energy research in Blackpool, Cumbria and Thornton. Now, these are areas in which we typically have, as the Conservative government in the past, have neglected. And these are areas that we want to now basically try to sort of improve going forward. It's going to take a lot of time, it's going to take money. We're going to improve the A1, the M62 and the M1, and the high-speed 2 rail that we're planning on pulling in is going to be part of the solution. Without developing other industry outside of basically finance and IT, which is predominantly what we've got now in the United Kingdom, things aren't going to improve. Okay, we need to start investing into advanced sciences, which is what UKIP have sort of touched on with their education policy. But although I don't agree with them on that, it doesn't go far enough in terms of having the links into industry, the other end. So we need to build the industries up so that there's jobs for people when they're coming out of university.
Can I?
Yes.
Well, the Greens basically we have 3 ideas to create more, to cease unemployment more so. Basically, the first one is to pay the living wage, not the minimum wage. And if you pay the living wage, you give an incentive to workers. Like, basically, when you're paying someone the minimum wage, you're like, I would pay you less.
How will you deal with the inflation?
Sorry?
How will you deal with the inflation as a result of that?
Well, if we're paying the living wage, people are going to be able to invest more in their local economies.
So it's just going to end up neutral.
Towards the living wage. We should be working towards the living wage. It starts with minimum wage. We raised that to £8 by 2019. Working towards the living wage by offering a tax rebate to companies that sign that pledge. And also, as well as increasing wages, we should be working to make costs cheaper by freezing gas and electric costs so that people's wage goes further.
On that point, it has been proven that both rent controls and energy freezes have not done any good to average consumers. This happens time and time again, where the price coefficient of it increases while the purchasing power of the average consumer doesn't. They shut off the supply. This is what happens. Look at Venezuela.
But all that's going to happen if you have controls like that is they're going to hike the prices up first and then freeze them at the higher price. Now, if you want to nationalise energy, nationalise it.
Here.
Okay, don't start messing around with the market economy.
Nationalise energy?
You tried that, you privatised it.
Because it didn't work.
In terms of the minimum wage and avoiding inflation, if you do it gradually, I think that would reduce the threat of inflation. The SNP is proposing a raise of the minimum wage to 8.70 by the end of the parliamentary term. I think in addition to that, move away from the more we're talking about the more general economic point, away from the austerity politics. A modest increase in public spending, a reinvestment in public services.
We could sell off our gold if we had any left.
We could do, but we don't. So. I think.
Oh yeah.
Also, in terms of the actual
Right.
wage, it was claimed there that the wages haven't actually decreased; they've increased. If you look at us in comparison to our neighbours, we are entirely lagging behind in terms of real incomes. We provide one of the lowest minimum wages in the EU, especially in terms of real incomes. It only goes down even further. It's all very well and good for the Conservatives, the Lib Dems, to say, "Oh, but it's going up, it's going up." They are mere numbers. In terms of real, substantive incomes, it's increased.
Where are you getting your figures from?
Continue to go down.
But what we've also seen under Conservatives is a doubling of food banks.
Okay, so...
And usage up 20-fold.
No one's actually done the research into why food bank usage has gone up. There's probably a few reasons why. And what's that?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it is self-explanatory at all. Actually, I think one of the first reasons is because people are more aware of them and there's decreased stigma. Right, so if you can get something for free, you're going to get something for free. That's what I would be like. Now, that's the first point.
Really, that might be what you're like, but that whole thing statistic and
okay. The second point.
There is a stigma about getting something for free and not being able to support yourself.
Well, do you mean to say that food bank usage has gone up 20-fold because people have become more aware of the freebies?
I hadn't finished my point.
People are more in tune. There's a number of charities out there who have done research into this and who are saying that a lot of it is to do with cuts to the welfare bill.
There's more evidence than just people show up at food banks to suggest that people are living in extreme poverty. So to count heads at a food bank isn't, it doesn't. I agree with Greg in the sense that it's not a good reflection of exactly how many people are living in poverty. But there is better barometers out there, and there is a lot of people living in extreme poverty.
I think what you're basically doing.
Have you finished?
If I may.
Yeah.
Well, UKIP's stance on our recent economic trolls can be tied very, very closely to something that I think Richie brought up earlier in terms of our productivity. Well, what we've seen over the last 40 years is a vast increase in the levels of regulation on our own businesses at different layers. So what we would propose is a two-pronged approach to increase purchasing power. One, we'll increase the competitiveness of British businesses by getting out of this exploitative arrangement we have with the EU, reclaiming our place in the Trade Council.
Lack of regulation.
And second of all, we would, and this is something that SNP and Labour have taken up, we'll raise the personal tax allowance to minimum wage to ensure that those who are dependent on those wages will get an appropriate amount of purchasing power, even if we do disagree with the living wage.
Okay, I'm cautious of time, so I'm going to, as heated as that was, maybe you can continue it in the bar later, but I'm going to move on to our wild card question. So, is there anyone in the audience who has a burning desire to ask a question? Who cares more out of the two of you?
I shall.
He waved his hand, he does.
Yeah, Kelters did wave a hand. Okay, but you have already asked a question. Aisha.
Also, this is kind of going away from policy to more, so it's all up in the air right now. Who would you join with in a coalition and why?
Finn, sit down. Okay, Finn.
It's a very hard one. A lot of people have talked about the danger of the SNP backing up a Labour government, but that really is nothing new. Basically, we've gone back to the politics of pretty much exactly 100 years ago, where there was a Liberal, left-leaning, reformist government backed up by a nationalist party from one particular region of the UK. In that case, it was the Irish Parliamentary Party. And that did not go disastrously wrong. It will. No. So long as Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon don't seize a post office in St George's Square. So long as they're kept on that path of constitutionalism, we're all going to be grand.
Richie.
So I was about who would I
take off the lid
who would I
ever offered?
Can you be fussy?
That's a tough question. Before Liberal Democrats were in power, I would probably have said Labour. But seeing what has happened in government and seeing that the course that I believe the country is on, and I think the United Kingdom is on the right tracks. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think I would probably go on the coalition again.
So can I just ask you, the amount of concessions, the amount of apologies that you've had to make here tonight, you would no, but all I'm saying is, the amount of concessions, the amount of apologies that you've had to make tonight, you're going to do that in 5 years.
We're not going to win the majority, and realistically, it's not going to.
The Liberals have been out.
They're on it like Clegg as the Prime Minister. I'm not naive to think that. But there's going to be concessions whatever situation. At least you're better off with the devil you know as the devil you don't know.
We do know what the devil's like though. 20,000 managers in the NHS, PFIs, they're going to destroy the NHS and carry on destroying it. That's that devil.
The austerity devil.
We're going to win with a majority. If we fail slightly short, then we'll happily go into a coalition again with our Liberal Democrat puppet. And if we have to pull the UKIP party in, we're having a referendum, which is pretty much their only policy.
Harry?
Was the same as ours, by the way?
Harry?
Well, the common sense approach is to go for the ones which agrees with our red line issues. Are you satisfied with more puppets? Are you satisfied with the same?
You're going to get
or do you want to get in the British People's Army and stand up? So we don't mind who's going in.
Kennedy?
Well, I
Guys, can we have a bit of order, please? We're nearly done. You can control yourself for 5 more minutes.
The Greens would be a great pressure on Home Labour to retain true to the socialist roots. We're also very open to working with our comrades in the SNP and David Cameron. Great lads.
Great bunch of lads. The SNP is interested in progressive alliances, so we would be very interested in working with Greens and Plaid Cymru and even Labour. And I agree with Finn that there is a historical precedent here to be observed. And I'm glad that Finn also agrees that a Labour SNP coalition would not be a disaster. It could even benefit quite a few of us, especially.
Finn, if I have to tell you again, I'll fine you.
Especially if we win concessions on Trident and no more cuts. However, it should be said, I'd be an idiot not to mention the spanner that I wager has accidentally been thrown into the works by a Michael Miliband when he said, as you may have seen, that he's not interested in talking to the democratic choice of the Scottish people on any terms. Now, in fact, he said that he would prefer to see David Cameron in government than go in with the SNP. Now, if he does do that, and I don't think he will, I think that we will wake up tomorrow, or we might wake up the next day, depending on how long the negotiations go on for, with a Labour minority backed up somehow by the SNP. But I will leave you maybe with this before talking just a wee bit more about how great the SNP is. If Ed Miliband does allow David Cameron into number 10 again, when he could have easily formed an alliance with a very moderate, let's be honest, like we're not raving nationalists. We want independence from Scotland. I mean, we're not hiding that. Obviously we want independent Scotland, but we are left-wing and anti-austerity party.
Wasn't a referendum a once-in-a-lifetime decision?
It's up to the Scottish people. If Ed Miliband,
they've made that decision.
And if they want to make it again, Ed Miliband, if he lets David Cameron into number 10, I don't think anyone will ever forgive him, especially in Scotland. We're all aware of what's happening to Labour in Scotland right now, but I don't think even people in England, Wales and Northern Ireland would forgive him if he just handed David Cameron the keys and voted SNP.
Okay, and finally, Robert.
Yeah, we have been very clear. We will work with our friends in the Scottish Nationalist Party and our friends in the Green Party, and even willing to work with the Labour Party Because we believe, I personally believe, Pride Cymru believes, that a progressive alliance can bring Labour back to its roots of real socialist policies working for working class people that was lost under Tony Blair's New Labour. Vote Plaid Cymru in Wales, vote SNP in Scotland, vote Green in England.
Okay, so that concludes the questions. We're now going to end with our 30-second closing remarks, and this time we'll start with Finbar Rogers for the Labour Party.
Right. Well, the Labour Party are the party that brings the most good to the most people in the country, because the Conservative Party, as I said before, tight-lipped, condescending, Southern English chauvinists, Plaid Cymru and the Scottish Nationalist Party are both nationalist parties that only concentrate on one region each of the Union. The UKIP party are just an anti-Europe pressure group that are doing amazingly well, punching above their weight. The Lib Dems are Labour Party, founded in Scotland, a strong presence in England and in Wales, but also popular among nationalists and Protestants in the north.
Richie, the Liberal Democrats.
The Liberal Democrats put the country's need before short-term political gain. We are paying the price for there being a seismic shift in the political landscape. The UK has not used the coalition governments, but coalitions will become the norm, just as it is becoming more common throughout Europe. And history will show the Liberal Democrats did an exemplary job as a minority party with only 8% of the MPs in government. And we want to continue the job we're doing, but furthermore, the UK needs us to continue the job we're doing.
For Plaid Cymru.
Now is the time. We've never had quite a general election quite like this. Now is the time for real devolution, for first-rate devolution in Wales, because I trust the Welsh people, but also it's time to say we are fed up with the old Westminster elite. We want to see an end to Labour and Conservative governments that don't work for anyone but themselves. We want to see an end to austerity. We want to see investment. We offer a real economic plan that will work for the Welsh people, but will also work for the people across the United Kingdom. Vote Plaid Cymru for a better Wales.
For the Conservative Party.
You can currently choose between a right-of-centre government that's going to improve upward social mobility, or you can vote for Labour and keep people at the bottom. A vote for the Tory is a vote for upward social mobility, and I urge you to vote for the Tories.
It's a nice bottom, though.
Thanks.
Now we have a winner for the Scottish National Party.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to shake up the Westminster system. I can't just, I know I've only got 30 seconds, can't let this guy away with upward social mobility. Sunday Times in April released a poll that showed that the 1,000 top richest people in the UK have more or less, on average, doubled their wealth since the Tories came to power. Anyway, if you are progressive, if you oppose austerity, if you oppose Trident, if you are a forward-thinking individual that cares about democracy, the SNP is your friend.
Kylie Noble for the Greens.
So,
sorry, Kylie.
We hear a lot in this election about the only choice between Labour and the Tories, and you can't vote for minority parties because where are we going to get? We're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to get anywhere. People don't vote for us. So people just keep thinking along the same binaries, and the useless Lib Dems will screw everyone over. So that's very pointless. Basically, also, if you will realise that the Greens were the only party here tonight that have candidates across the whole United Kingdom.
We do.
So do the Tories. We also have an international outlook, and we want to work globally against the problems.
And finally, we have Harry Dare for the UK Independence Party.
Ladies and gentlemen, I implore the House to stand beside the United Kingdom in every single part of it. British identity is the closest here in Europe we have come to the American melting pot identity. Why now should we let that slip by in a time which we need to stay closer together? End the pork barrel politics of regional interest groups. End the interests of exploitative transnational corporations, end the self-serving public officials, and stand beside UKIP.
Okay, so you may remember way back at the start of the debate, it seems like a long time ago now, that we had a vote, and that was a vote purely on your biases of how you intend to vote or how you have voted today in the election. Now, just for a bit of fun, we won't judge you and we won't tie your identity to this vote, but just for, again, curiosity, we'd like to know if you had no prior knowledge or belief in politics and you purely just come in and sat in this room and listen to these 7 lovely candidates, who would you vote for then? Okay, so we won't judge you, we won't, brand you. So who, based on tonight, would vote for Mr. Harry Adair? 1, 2. Okay, and for the Skyly Noble and the Green Party?
1.
2. Okay. And for Connor and the Scottish National Party? Wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12. And for Craig? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep.
A president's secret.
And for Robert Merton, Plaid Cymru? Yep. And for the Liberal Democrats? And for the Labour Party, Finbar Rogers.
I hope that's the result today.
And that's us. Thank you very much for the general election. Please get your formal ticket. It's the event of the year. Come see me with your money, and then please join us in the bar afterwards. Hello. Really interesting.